we have, okay, recording in progress. Do we have a quorum? We need 10.
There are 17 participants. What do you need for quorum?
10 executive members. 1, 2, 3, 5. Margaret can be counted tonight.
No, I don't count.
5, 7, 8.
Kara doesn't count either.
Yes, we have a quorum. No. I'm just saying.
Okay.
We're good.
You
We have
count.
a quorum. So why don't we start with, before we approve the minutes, Rob, welcome. Welcome to
Oh,
your
thank you. Thank you.
maiden exec committee meeting. And
So-
can you take attendance for
I will
the,
begin by taking attendance.
Yeah.
Please mic up and say here or present. Sylvia Alexander,
Present.
Bob Bender,
Here.
Rob is here, Edward Green,
Here.
Bob Vanuzzi,
I'm here.
David Gelman. Yeah. Ram Dot Singh. Not yet. Ted Morris. Charles Modler. Omar Murray. Dan Paternock.
Here.
Laura is here. Nick Fazio.
Here.
Marty Walpole.
Here.
Julia Gomez.
Here.
Diamaris Escano Bell. Thought I saw him. No. Sergio Villaverde.
Present and unaccounted for.
Margaret Della. Not yet. 1, 2, 3.
I thought I saw
Indeed.
Margaret's name. on
Hi,
the-
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed, we have a quorum. That's 12.
Okay, well, again,
Also,
welcome everybody.
Just Rob, I'm here as well.
Oh, did I
This
skip
is
you?
Deb Travis, yeah.
Wow, why are you not on my list? Okay. Deb,
Rod, if
Travis.
she's not on the list, that's my fault.
Oh,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. No,
Sorry,
it's
Deb.
fine. I should have noticed it. Okay.
Ted is entering the room right now.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Who is
Karen?
entering?
For the record, Ted is coming in right now.
Oh, okay.
And Chuck said he will be late. He's going to try to come in later.
So Ted Morris, say here. I see you, so I know you are. Okay, thanks. Okay. Keep track.
All
as
right,
things
so
continue.
the minutes from the October exec were distributed. Are there any comments on those minutes? And thank you, Bob Bender, for doing them. Hearing no comments, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
A second.
Second.
Thank you. So the minutes of October are unanimously approved. Okay, I have a brief chair's report. And I want to remind everybody that at our meeting next week at 6:30, we'll be distributing the Irving Latimer Community Service Awards and Most Valuable Merchant Awards. That will take place at 6:30, from 6:30 to 7. So I hope that all will attend to honor our well-deserved honorees. Last night I received word that Jill Towns has sent in her resignation from the board. I want to say how grateful I am for her excellent service, particularly chairing the SCREE committee. Margaret Della, who has served as vice chair, will facilitate tomorrow night's SCREE meeting. And I thank you, Margaret. And Margaret is here tonight as well for the exec. Courtney Dastis Galvin, she hasn't been attending and I have been in touch with her, and she has given birth to a healthy baby boy at the end of September, and she hopes to be able to rejoin us soon. So that was a bit of good news.
Great.
I want to mention that I have a meeting tomorrow with the administrator of the W, which was formerly the Riverdale Manor. regarding many quality of life issues that are occurring that affect the community and the businesses along Marshall Avenue. There's been aggressive panhandling. There's just been a lot of issues which we had hoped when the Manor became the W, there would be a big improvement. And for a while there was. And the purpose is to reestablish what the board had facilitated years ago with the Riverdale Manor, a community advisory board, and to bring to the administrator's attention so that we can work on these issues together. That's on that. And I'll be reporting to Health Hospital Social Services about that meeting, and Omar is also trying to attend. The big item in the past few weeks has been the proposed homeless shelter at 6661 Broadway. The board has received many letters, many calls. Our two public hearings combined had over 600 people in attendance, 700 people on those calls. They have spoke from the heart about the issues. I publicly said at the meeting with the Department of Homeless Services that I understood the grave concerns that the community has, because they're legally, the Department of Homeless Services cannot screen for mental illness, criminal records, sexual offender status, and the like. And so in light of the fact that they also mentioned prisons are closing in the state and elsewhere, and there seems to be a pipeline going to homeless shelters. There were many concerns expressed about this particular model, the 130, and the fact that it is a general shelter. I don't know who's texting me. I better turn this off because it drives me nuts. About why this particular model, when the AAPCI group that is the organization, the nonprofit that is running it, they seem to have experience with other models, be it family, be it smaller number with homeless clients who are employed and the like. So there were a lot of issues. We, of course, community board runs on resolutions. And so Chuck, and he'll be here later, we'll be looking at a land use resolution dealing with process, whereas Health Hospital Social Services, they will be dealing with, you know, other issues related to this and the presentation, and you know, their objections to this particular model. So I know this is going to be discussed later, but I just wanted to say the community board has reached out to the businesses to give them information to help them with their contracts. It's 5 businesses that are going to be eliminated for this demolition. And we're trying to respond, you know, to the community. We're hearing the community and working with our elected officials. So with that, that is my report. And we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Is Dio here? Kira, have you?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Okay. So Dio, you're on.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everybody. Okay, so you should have received the report earlier. We've allocated $63,434 from our total budget so far. And we have, excuse me, we have $205,920 remaining for fiscal year 2022. Following that is the table summarizing our progress on the other than personal services budget. As you can see, it's we allocated $7,907 dollars, and we have $27,113 remaining. There are no budget modifications this month. And next up is table 1.3 with our purchase orders and accounts payable update, showing that we hold $4,593 in encumbered funds. And then finally, the rent and energy detail. There for your reference, as you know, it's maintained separately by OMB and in accordance with our lease. But we've allocated 14,181 and have 52,991 remaining for fiscal year 2022. And that's it.
Any questions for Dio?
Laura, I see Julia has her hand up and Dan.
Okay, Julia.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I actually had a question for you in your report, and I'm not sure this is the appropriate time for it, but I was wondering, I believe we changed our meeting times from 7:30 to 7 after your review during the pandemic. I was wondering if the committee or whoever could reconsider that with so many people going back to work. I will say this is personally for me, I've been home for about 30 minutes. And so 7 o'clock or 6:30 start times are a little difficult for anyone who has been told they have to return to the office.
Yes, it is traumatic, I'm sure, returning to the office, and the full board always met at 7:30. And we did change it for, when we started Zooming. Why don't I put that out to people? I mean, that's a very good point. And see what people have to say. I don't think I'm prepared with an answer right now, just on my own.
Nope, I just asking that it be considered.
Yes, I agree. I think
all city employees are back full-time as of mid-September, so
right.
I don't know who else has been ordered back. That's all I can speak to directly, but thank you for your consideration.
Oh, absolutely. It's an absolute, it's a good point. People have long commutes and whatnot. So, thanks, Julie. Thanks. Dan, you had a question?
I did. It was for you, Laura, before. I'm sad to hear that Jill is leaving us. Did she send any information kind of like the way Lisa did about her resignation? Was there any
No.
message from Jill?
No, she just notified the board. There wasn't a message. I wasn't surprised, if that's what you mean, because I know she has a lot of things going on, but no, she didn't send any message. I will send something out to the board tomorrow. I got it last night. Today was just very, very hectic.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other
Marty?
questions?
Marty?
Yes, you mentioned the awards for the
Yes.
two community board awards.
Yes.
You say they're being given out next month, or the word's going out next month?
We're doing it on Zoom just the way we did it last year. The honorees will be in attendance. The awards.
So we as a board don't know who the honorees are.
It was announced in June. Rob did it on the merchants and Lisa did it on the, it was announced. Yes, it was announced. And she also announced it at exec.
I must have missed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Marty, I can forward you the information tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, they have received the award snail mail, but this will be our second year on Zoom. So, okay, let's see. Kira, District Manager's Report.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. First, I'd like to welcome Rob and Ramdot to exec. Now I'll just go into my report. As some of you may know, we had a devastating fire on Bailey Avenue at West 238th Street Monday night. I'm sure Nick will report on this, but I'll just briefly give some information. We were able to connect the Director of Government Relations and Emergency Services over at SBS with Tracy at Bamba, with Nick, and I'm happy to report they were on site within an hour of the fire themselves. They get contacted by OEM. They were out there meeting with business owners, like I said, within the hour. So I asked them just to keep us updated, and if there's anything we can do to help, we're happy to do so. As some of you may have also seen, Navardo Lopez, Bronx Commissioner of DOT, is moving on to a position with New York State. I'm working with Deb on tying up some loose ends and getting some meetings with their office on specific things that they were working with us on. Rob Falcaro, who was our sanitation superintendent, has been promoted. and we're working together. I'm working with the new superintendent and Bob Fanuzzi to set up a meeting to introduce him to our district, go over our concerns, and see how we can work together. Rob Falcaro was great. All of our superintendents since I've been at CB8 have been super helpful to us. So I hope to continue a good relationship with sanitation. The office rehab is complete. It looks great. Obviously, after construction, there's a mess. There's lots of dust and garbage. So our cleaning crew came in last night and did a big clean and sanitize the office for us. So now we're kind of starting to go back and organize and throw out some moldy items that have just kind of been sitting there. So I'll be working with Tanya, Pablo, and Laura on this, and I'll keep you guys updated. We should be back in the office very soon. We continue to receive calls and emails regarding the homeless shelter proposed at 6661 Broadway. Department of Homeless Services has been invited to the December 7th land use meeting. Alongside with Nick and Laura, we're working on getting those merchants that will be affected by the proposed shelter some information and connecting them with SBS. I've sent a request to Parks and DEP to discuss daylighting and the Putnam Trail Greenway at the December 15th meeting of the committees. I did send over some updates from the governor's office to you guys yesterday regarding new legislation that will affect some of how we operate at Community Board 8 or at all community board levels. I'm waiting on a memo from the borough president's office to see how it directly affects us. Once we get that guidance, I'm happy to share it with all of you. That will take effect November 19th.
Marty's
and I
going to
saw-
talk about that later. He's definitely on that
Yes.
one.
And I saw here Rose McTague, who was my former English teacher in high school, is on the meeting. So I just wanted to say hello to you, Miss McTague.
Thank you, Kira. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's good to
Thank
see
you.
you.
So I'm so proud of you, honey. So proud of you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I see Dan and David have their hands up.
Be sure you use your punctuations, Kiara.
I know. Dan?
Oh, yeah. So Kira, you mentioned that you invited DHS to the December 7th Land Use Committee meeting. Is there a meeting beforehand that DHS can come, or have they committed, or have they said that senior staff is available on December 7th?
Not as of yet, no.
But
I know at the land use meeting, Laura, you said that they had committed to come to a future meeting.
Yes, they
Has there been
did.
has there been more conversation of what dates actually work for the agency?
Well, that's why we were discussing dates, and December 7th was the next land use committee meeting. So that's what
It
I
just
provided
seems
to
like
them.
it just seems that December 7th is a long ways off, considering, that a contract could be signed before that.
Well, we're also, Dan, we're working on a meeting with the elected officials. The elected officials are organizing a meeting for the community board and DHS. A smaller meeting.
I understand, but I guess that's separate from what we do, as a land use committee, and just, I guess I'm concerned about the communication with DHS and setting up what probably should be a special committee meeting, for land use. And I just feel that December 7th is probably way too long to wait.
Well, let's talk to
Okay,
Chuck.
well, yeah, I'll talk to Chuck. He just
talk to
asked me
Chuck.
to invite them to December 7th, so that's what I did. But I'm happy to discuss with Chuck. David?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry if I missed it in your opening, Laura. I was about 4 minutes late into the meeting.
How dare you?
It happens. Julia's not the only one who has trouble making it home in time. Did you mention the meeting we had with Councilman Dinowitz regarding our budget items that he has supported?
Thank you. I definitely should have. Yes, we had a very productive meeting. We went over, David, Kira and I, the budget items. I believe, Kira, did we send out the budget items to exec?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. And several of the things that we wanted are on there, and it was all good news. Yeah, but the track, there were education, there were parks issues. something in Ewan Park. Yeah, so we sent that out so that everybody could look at it and see the kinds of things that were funded. You know, obviously for the whole district, his District 11. Yeah, that was a good meeting, and we're gonna have meetings with Senator Rivera. We had one meeting, and now we'll have a special budget meeting. He's interested. So yeah, the goal is to keep our priorities in front and center in front of the elected officials and see if we can get them funded. And that'll be a year-round drip going on. So
Right. Good. I encourage all the chairs on the committee to keep those items in mind as Kira identified them in your planning for the coming budget cycle. My other question is, it's basically almost a year to the date when I asked this question last year. We had a busy summer where we have different priorities, but we've gone through September, October, and November, and I don't believe we've had any newsletters in the new fiscal year. So I was wondering what happened to it. Was a decision made to stop producing newsletters? And if so, was that decision made amongst the executive committee and or the board? Because I don't think that's the case.
no, there was no decision made. I guess it just didn't happen. There was no,
We can talk about that further. I apologize about that. I know you missed the newsletters, David. But we can.
What's it? No, it's not a matter of me. I mean, I would guess somewhere between 35 and 60% of our members don't use Facebook or Twitter. And, you know, the newsletter seemed to have been a very good mechanism to communicate. And you always want to communicate in multiple media wherever possible. You know, I know it's difficult. I know it's time consuming, but it's not, you know, 20 old farts that are reading it. I think there is a large number of members in the community who do turn to it for a sense of what's going on in the community and what the priorities are of the community board. So I think we should have a multi-pronged attack of you know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if we're relevant, and the newsletter and the calendar.
Sure, point taken. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you.
Nick. I see your
Hello.
hands up.
Hi, thank you.
Hello.
Good evening. Hey, Marvin, we can hear you.
I muted him. I think he took a phone
Okay.
call.
I want to just thank Kira for being so quick in her response to the fire and engaging with SBS so early in the process. And Ms. Nation's response was a very detailed email about what they're doing, how they're going to go about doing it. And it definitely put my mind at ease that I know that the businesses are going to be assisted through the city. And they have a team of specialists, their emergency response unit, and very happy with the response, although it is a very tragic, horrible incident. On a lighter note, I just want to let everyone know that the BDD application, which those businesses are in, was approved by DFS today. So that's a good thing. And I also let Ridgewood know about this incident, as well as KRVC and BOEDC. And without getting anyone's expectations up too high, everyone is interested in assisting these businesses, including Ridgewood Bank, which is would help them satisfy their obligation to New York State that is as per the BDD designation. So there is a silver lining, and I'm very pleased that I'm optimistic that we can help the businesses recover. So thank you.
Thank you. It was incredibly fast. Nick, Kira, the community, the firemen. Thank God no one was hurt, but it's devastating when this happens, definitely.
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
I resent David calling me one of the 20 old farts.
You know, you may have noticed I didn't use no names whatsoever. If you choose to self-identify, that's a different story.
If the shoe fits, I'm wearing it.
Very, Very true. Okay, so we'll move on to committee resolutions. We'll start with public safety. Kira, put them up.
Sure. Okay.
All right, hello, everybody. Okay, so we had 3 renewals and 1 new application. The renewals were for full liquor licenses for Palace of Japan located at 3505 Johnson Avenue, Montezuma Mexican Restaurant located at 119 West Kingsbridge Road, and The Hill Bistro located at 3541 Riverdale Avenue. And Palace of Japan was approved by the committee unanimously. Montezuma Mexican Restaurant approved by the committee unanimously. And The Hill Bistro was approved by the committee with 1 abstention. And we had to do a little bit of looking into there was a question of whether the corporate change, whether this should have been a corporate change, whether it should have been filed as a corporate change rather than a renewal. But after concurring with SLA, the board staff, I want to thank them also for their work on this. We've determined that the application was filed properly. So that was approved with 1 abstention. And also we had 1 new application, which was for Casa Tobala, located at 3732 Riverdale Avenue. And they also, they signed a 2 a.m. Agreement, which is agreeing to close their establishment by 2 a.m. for the first year of operation. And that application was approved unanimously by the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed? Okay. I don't see any.
I don't see any hands.
Okay, are there any other besides the land use resolution, Kira?
Yep, we have education.
Okay.
Sylvia, right here.
At our meeting, we considered Rabbi Shemtov's application of the Hanukkah menorah lighting. The first thing he did when he came on was to tell me that I had the date wrong and the time wrong. However, it was exactly the way we got it from downtown. And I wondered if Kira has checked on it. They are going to have it on November 28th, which is the first night of Hanukkah, and it's going to be from 4 to 5:15. Originally, the application said December 5th, which is the last day of Hanukkah. So hopefully that is okay with downtown and that they get the permission. It was unanimously passed by the committee.
Sylvia, the SAPO office had no issues with the change. And they're awaiting the resolution when it goes to the full board.
But was it their change or did we just get the wrong information or he had the wrong information submitted?
I don't know
or-
where it originated, but I just copy and pasted it from the website. So I don't know if it was the rabbi's problem or mistake or SAPO's mistake. I'm not sure.
Okay, but he came on blaming us, so, okay. It's done.
We get blamed for everything.
Well, at least he showed up to make the request this time.
He comes every year.
Yeah,
No,
he comes every year.
He's missed a couple.
Well, listen, as long as it's straightened out and it goes on at the right time and the right day, that's. the main
Hopefully
thing,
that
and it
will
at the
happen.
end. Yes. Okay. Any questions for Sylvia? Okay. Chuck is going to come at 8 or by 8. He said he has a conflict, so I would hold that if there's no objection, and then move on to committee member issues for discussion, and see how this works out.
I have a brief issue with, that I discussed with Bob, and if Bob wants to take the lead on it. Bob Bender?
Yeah, sure, Sergio. So as I think many of you know, there has been a Veterans Day ceremony at the Memorial Grove in Van Cortlandt Park for the past 12 years, and it will happen again this Sunday at 12 noon at the Memorial Grove in Van Cortlandt Park. And I think everybody knows that it was Herb Barrett. Initially it was Herb with a colleague of his named Don Tannen, who brought the whole issue of the Memorial Grove before the community board. And the community board got behind it. Then Councilman Copel got behind it and provided funding for the Memorial Grove to be restored. And Herb began organizing this ceremony, which as those of you who've been there, and I know there are a handful of people on the Zoom right now who have attended these previous ceremonies. It's a wonderful ceremony. It's very moving, and it's a lot of work. Herb is doing it again this year, but he said this will be his final year. Herb just turned 90, and there's a lot of work involved in this, and he said he just can't continue to do it after this year. So Sergio and I spoke about who might take it from here in the future. And we have some ideas, but we definitely, this has really become a part of the social fabric in Riverdale. This ceremony has become a tradition, and we don't want to see it end. And we'd like to keep it going. So I said to Sergio, I thought this would be a terrific project for the Veterans Committee. And Sergio was receptive, and Sergio, why don't you take it from here?
Right, so I'm reaching out to a couple of groups at Manhattan College who I have some contact with, the ROTC and the Veterans Group, to see if we can get some institutional buy-in to continue it. The Parks Department has been great in their assistance of it, but this has really become a, we have Memorial Grove. It's something that we should highlight. It's in our neighborhood. It highlights and honors our veterans. So it's an important place that prior to her, coming in and doing this was really forgotten. So, we definitely are going to figure out by hook or by crook how to have this done every year. I'm looking for institutional buy-in, and as long as, and I spoke to Bob, I know he was facilitating the last Parks meeting, and I'll work with the new Parks chair in terms of saying that, the Veterans Committee, while it exists, the Special Veterans Committee, will take the lead on this and making sure that it happens.
Good, excellent, good timing for this. New blood, new blood.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and obviously anybody who has, strong connections within the veterans community and who feels that they could be helpful in, helping us to identify an institution that can continue this tradition. I know Sergio would love to hear from you.
Absolutely, please bring it all. Email me, contact me with any people or ideas that you may have. The more, the more spoons in this soup, the better, actually.
Yeah.
But like I said, Manhattan College is a neighbor. They are there. So I do have an email out to try and get the contact information for those two groups. So that's where I am. And I just sent the invitation to some of us. I asked it to be sent out to the whole board in our list for the event on Sunday. I might as well say it now. The
Sure.
event is happening this Sunday at noon. It's like, as Bob said, it's become a cornerstone of what we do to honor veterans. 2 years ago, before the pandemic, we had actually a Gold Star mother show up, who's a Bronx resident whose son passed away in the Persian Gulf or was killed in the Persian Gulf. So, it's a very appropriate and touching ceremony, and it's something we should definitely continue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Marty, I think you wanted to bring up the open meetings law issue.
Yes, thank you. all of you have received a copy of what the governor signed and will go into effect within the next 2 weeks. And also Camelia hinted at Monday's meeting. There are two parts of OML she's changed. One is totally not relevant to us. It involves the MTA and route changes and whatever. But basically, the concern here is that the public be fully informed of what will be discussed at meetings, at public meetings, and all of our meetings are public meetings. And so what the law says is that the public needs to have in hand 24 hours in advance of any meeting where a resolution is to be discussed. The resolution has to be publicly noticed. It sounds pretty simple, except Laura and I had a conversation earlier today, and some of the thoughts I've had before. It means on the front that if you plan a meeting and you intend to have a resolution come up during the course of that meeting, and I use the word now, if you plan to have, then in theory, you need to make sure that the community board has the opportunity to post it for the public to read and have in hand when that meeting takes place. That's within 24 hours in advance. The first question that comes up, well, there are several questions that come up. One is, will there be a time, can there be a time when technical difficulties will prevent that from happening? And I can give you several suggestions where that might come up, and I'll suggest that in a moment. And the second issue that comes up is what is the lead time one needs? Or the second question is whether or not a resolution coming from the floor is somehow prevented from taking place. To that, I would suggest the answer is no. A resolution coming from the floor comes from the floor. There have been several resolutions. For example, I go to Monday night and I've been in slight contact with Chuck concerning this. I mean, he's at a handicap. If you're going to have a meeting Monday night, then the executive committee meets on Wednesday night. He may not have turnaround time to be able to get a 24-hour notice out. And if there are resolutions that do get out, and through communication within the board, public communication, that there's needs for amendment before it's discussed, wordsmanship or what have you, how does that new one get out to the public in advance? These are subjects that will be discussed next Monday, or this coming Monday, at LRE, when we tear apart and try and make sure we learn what the OML really stands for. I will tell you that I've had difficulty in the last couple of weeks when I thought I knew how to read and find that the stuff that I read in black and white in the OML is not what it means. Video conferencing being one of them, and that too will be discussed at the meeting on Monday. So I bring this to your attention. The concern is full details and how it's implemented. I will not fully know until we discuss, or more importantly, until we have a roadblock somewhere along the way, which suddenly didn't make sense to us. And it's not laid out, as far as I know, in what the governor signed. But we need to know that if a resolution is to come before your committee and you want people to see it before they come to the meeting, then the public needs to see it 24 hours in advance.
Marty.
Yeah, Sergio.
So, but it refers to any document we're going to use, whether we're going to vote on it or not. So theoretically, the resolution that Chuck had that we're reviewing tonight, that's on our agenda, that 24-hour notice of that had to go out, even though we're not voting on it. We're just discussing it.
Well, that's something I mentioned with Laura, and I need to look into. The
Right.
fact is, we don't vote tonight.
Right.
We recommend it goes forward. We recommend that it goes back. But technically, we are my assumption at this moment is that we're a public body who will be discussing a resolution, and in theory, 24-hour notice to the community needs to go out. again, we're gonna have to trip over a few things till we see how it works. But I'm waiting for Monday to iron some of these things out.
Thank you, Marty.
And also, we're anticipating a memo from the Borough President's office on some guidance, because a lot of community boards have issues and, you know, questions about it. I was hoping that we would have it by tonight, but we haven't gotten it yet. But at the last Borough Board meeting in October, the end of October, we were assured we were going to be getting some guidance on this. There's also we sent out notice to the exec on a workshop on open meetings law held by New York State. And the open meetings law, you know, division, we can ask questions there as well. I know I registered for it.
As did I, but I don't think it's open meetings law. I think it's the Committee on Open Government that's conducting it, but it's on FOIL.
Oh, I didn't pick that
Yeah,
up.
yeah, it's about FOIL.
Foil.
Oh, all right. So we wouldn't be asking them those questions, but you know what?
It is the same office though, Laura. So
Yeah, but we can always
sure
write
they
our
might welcome questions, and I also have a call into that office for more information on this new rule. So once we have more information, we can move forward.
Many questions about the virus still exist, but much more.
The starting date of this, I believe, Kira, was November
19th.
November 19th, technically, so it hasn't started yet. But all chairs need to be cognizant of this, so we'll be learning.
Yeah, and it's something I'm particularly interested in, obviously, just so I know how the office is going to distribute this stuff. What's the best way to get it to the community, how we're going to get it out 24 hours in advance. I want to see what other community boards are doing. So this is something that I'm eagerly waiting more information on.
As I said, I plan to discuss this Monday night as part of our agenda. And we'll try and give whatever feedback we can after we try to interpret it. But as I said, sometimes what looks like black and white, and I learned how to read, is not what it says.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, I just
committee
want to
member
mention one
issues
more
for-
thing.
Oh,
Some
sure.
of you know from past years, for each of my committee meetings, I go through the City Council's legislative calendar to see what's online, what's being discussed by the various committees. On occasion, I share it with committee chair. And frankly, with very limited exception, I've received no response that this is good. We like, please send it again. I mean, it seems to fall off the cliff. So if, when I send it out this week and there are people who think you'd like to see more of them, I'll be happy to share more of them. If not, it's no big deal to me.
Marty, I'm not sure I'm getting it. So if you're sending it to the chairs, I might not be on your list.
Well, you weren't on my list prior to this, and it hasn't gone out this year yet.
Oh, okay. So
what
perfect. I
I've
haven't missed
done-
anything yet.
Right. I go to the website for the city council. I download all of the information concerning what the city council is looking at, considering bills, introductions, what have you. And then I I sort so that they're collected by committees, they're collected by well, even subcommittees. I try to highlight the things I think are interesting. And I send it to the committee and then various committees. My committee looks at it, but I send it to the other committees to look at, to see if there's anything of interest to their committee that they want to consider or look into further. And it's something for us to do, and I share it with you. If people appreciate receiving it, then I'll keep on doing it. If not, I'll keep it to my committee.
See, if you were truly an old fart, you wouldn't be able to do copy, paste, sort, etc. So I'm duly impressed.
Okay, well, by the way, I warn people in advance, do not print it out. Not that it's illegal, but it'll take you 2-3 reams of paper. So I suggest that you search via subject or just roll down and print out the ones you want rather than being, you're free to do so. Nothing illegal about it, but it'll take you a lot of paper for no reason.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Thank you for doing that.
Laura, I see David's hand up. I don't know if it's.
Okay,
Yeah, well, since we have a few minutes, I thought I'd just take 30 seconds about the Dinowitz budget pieces. Kira shared it with me and with Laura. It's not clear that went out to all the members of the executive committee, but I'll just quickly read the 3 items. It was the fact that he's funding the track reconstruction at the Intech Academy, the library rehab and reconstruction at 141 Kingsbridge, Riverdale Kingsbridge Academy, and then the new fence at Van Cortlandt House Museum, though I think it's the rehabilitation of the existing fence. I don't think it's to replace it wholesale. Is that correct, Kira?
I'm not sure.
Okay, not important, but a major.
David, that is correct. The fence has to be scraped and repainted.
Yeah, that makes sense. But they're all very good things that the councilman is funding, and thought people might want to know since we have a few minutes before Chuck, I guess.
is there, thank you, David. Thank you. Any other member issues for discussion or follow up on outstanding issues?
Book and we'll have a conversation with him tomorrow.
Okay, so I guess we could start then on the land use resolution, and Chuck should be joining us soon. He said he would try to get on by 8 o'clock.
Sure. Give me just one moment while I pull it up.
Sure.
I don't think the screen is big enough for the resolution.
I'm going to be sharing the updated resolution that we sent out this afternoon. And I don't believe it has the votes on it, but there were 3 abstentions. I can share the vote with you guys if you would like. Do you see my screen?
It's
Screen, yes. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. I think it's still a work in progress. Chuck had gotten some emails and said he was going to make some changes.
Yeah, I believe he incorporated and considered changes that he had received up until today.
Yeah.
But like Laura
then he
said,
got
he is
more.
open to more comments and more changes, obviously.
Okay, well, those who've had opportunity to read it, it is rather long. Do we want to have any comments?
Well, Laura, I certainly have some comments.
Okay, I was hoping
wanna
that
start?
Chuck would be here, but I think we should get started on it and relate to him. Yes, no, I don't think we could wait.
Mhm.
And this way we'll have discussion and then we'll let him know.
Laura, would you like me to call Chuck and let him know that we're starting discussion?
Sure.
While we're waiting, I just want to note, Chuck mentioned that I made some changes and he included them as the text in red toward the end. And he greatly expounded on the things I was saying, and I wasn't looking to create another be it resolved. I was looking to just change one sentence earlier on, and actually with the thing that he's created, I think I could use, I would suggest others who are more experienced with these discuss whether that actual whole thing, that whole red paragraph, since it's more a so-called statement of fact rather than a request, that paragraph become another whereas, but that really wasn't the content I was looking for. But because there are some words that some people could find inflammatory.
Wait a minute, in what you sent inflammatory or what was there?
No, what I was trying to change, but now this red paragraph could be inflammatory as well. So I think we should discuss it, but also it's not really a request. It's really a so-called statement of fact, which I believe should be a whereas. Marty, do you have any comments on that?
My comment is that when I read it, I agreed with it. The intent here is that, and I asked Chuck to include, and he did, reference to the Paterson law. When we've had group homes make presentations in the Paterson law, they have to tell us what their program is, what it looks like, who's being hired, what's the staffing patterns, and so on. I thought this tapped into that that deficiency that DHS is not sharing with us. So I did not find this, I found this to the point.
Okay.
I had said that I felt that in the 8th whereas, is it the 8th one on, well, I don't know, I have a couple of versions going on here, but where it talked about individuals characterized as homeless persons, drifters, dependent, abused adults, children afflicted with schizophrenia and other mental challenges, drug use. I thought that could all be softened. I thought.
Laura, excuse me, I'm sorry. Chuck has just entered the room.
Oh,
so
good.
I just want to
Very good.
welcome him.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No. I had suggested some of the language be softened so as to not sound, like stereotypes. I had said that in certain places.
And that's what I was getting on toward in my comment to Chuck on Monday. I have my email to him.
Right.
I put your stuff in.
Lower down.
Yeah.
David,
No,
David,
I
put your stuff in the rest.
Sort of, but now's a good time for everybody to discuss it.
I thought that's what the board is for, but okay.
Yeah, no, we just put it up, Chuck. We just put it up. We haven't really discussed it. I said earlier that this is for land use, for planning, for in terms of the process and the planning. The health and hospitals resolution is more what we're urging the Department of Homeless Services to continue to engage with Community Board 8 and elected officials because of rejection of this model. I mean, Omar and I have had many conversations, and of course, we haven't had that meeting yet. That's a different kind of be it resolved. So anyway, people said they had comments, so.
Yep, I see Julia and Dan have hands.
Hold on just a moment. I thought you had a resolution from them.
Oh, Health and Hospitals meets next week.
Oh, what was the resolution I saw?
I sent you a draft of it. It's for, yeah, and I don't mean to interfere on your time. It starts with, whereas the Department of Homeless Services presented its plan, for what it is, and that for legal reasons, clients may be accepted into the shelter program, the things I have said earlier, and that where it is, and issues with what, with that radius, with that block, and then it was resolved, but we haven't done it yet, Chuck, because Health and Hospitals meets the day after the full board. No, but I just don't want, we don't need some of the things that that David said basically is in this resolution, but it doesn't matter. Let's just have our comments out.
You said there were two hands up, Julie and somebody else.
Okay, Julia, go ahead, and then Dan, and then Bob.
Thank you. I guess my concern is just echoing what you, Madam Chair, and David have said. Is just, as someone who's worked in this field for a long time with homeless individuals, my concern is that any characterization of them as criminals or somehow divergent, undesirable, one isn't necessarily accurate or fair. But two, also, I think actually detracts from our argument of saturation. I think that's the argument we should be going for, pointing out the park and all those other things just kind of hints at and dances around the edges of these people are somehow predators and they're going to sexually assault you and they're going to touch your children. And all of those things make me very uncomfortable. And I think it's beneath us. I think the argument is the saturation. I think it's a strong argument. The SAG piece is extremely, I think that's the method to go, especially with DHS. I think that will ring more saliently, if it rings at all, to be completely transparent, than would this idea of we don't want them here because they're dangerous, which again, there's a large overlap between mental illness and homelessness and substance misuse and homelessness and general behavioral health and homelessness. But
Julia,
that's yes, sir.
let me respond to that. I agree with you that people who are homeless are not necessarily any of those other negative characteristics. The problem in that regard, however, is that the term homelessness has been a coined term aggregating for political reasons. It was done for that reason. It's a coined phrase to take the edge off. They now aggregate those with criminal records, sexual predators, schizophrenia, with people who are homeless, people who are the old Prince of the Road hobo variety, and 15 other things. They refuse to separate them off.
Well, that's not entirely accurate, Mr. Merdler. There is specialized housing for people who are in recovery, are working towards their recovery, people who do have mental or behavioral health issues and can qualify for that. The issue generally is that such a large proportion of this population needs to somehow have documented proof that they've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar, one of the big bad five, or that they've been in treatment. And for those who are undomiciled and transferring from shelter to shelter, retaining those documents is exceedingly difficult.
So we had a meeting in the borough president's office in 2017. I believe Dan Paternak was among those present at that, involving a facility that was going to have both a predominance of people with mental illness and a minority population of those who were generally homeless. And the city of New York and DHS flatly refused to separate off the two, and so did a very, very able manager for it, who is somebody whose name I forget, but who was at the time a member of the board of Emblem Health, and I worked with. And they said, we will not do that. And when they were asked by me the last time, which was about a year ago, they said, we're legally bound not to. And I confronted them with the fact that that's nonsense. Yes.
I can't speak to that. I wasn't in those meetings. But there is New York 1 specialized housing, New York 2 specialized housing, and New York 3 separate rounds that are for people who have behavioral health challenges, whether they're single adults, families, whether they're going to be in a congregate setting, whether they're going to be in scattered site housing. So I'm not sure if that was a slightly different issue you brought up, or if that was not the issue at hand.
Let me come up, because I do agree with you that there are places that are separated, but as a matter of practice, they won't do it. So for example, the MTA had a problem on 125th Street Station where there were congregants all over the place. And at that point, we could ask them, please, we at MTA will pay for you to have those facilities done and separated. They refused to do it. That was one example. This was the one.
I can't speak to that, Mr. Merdler. All I can tell you, as I used to be the executive director of multiple housing projects that were specially for those in substance use recovery, which were normally funded by OASIS, those who were behavioral health issues, both SROs, families in single units and scattered site, which were funded by DHS, and they had to have a New York 3 designation, which identified them as mentally ill or in recovery. So I'm not sure what
I
you're
don't
referring to,
disagree
but
with
it does
that.
exist.
I don't disagree with that. My only point in this regard is that there are people who are at facilities where they just don't bother to separate them. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is a very simple one. There are 3 reasons to reject this. One, in my view, the one that should be predominant is lack of process, lack of protocols and the like. Number 2, that there is saturation, and I'll deal with that in a half a second. And then number 3 is the failure to provide the kind of services and commitments to services that are required. That said, there are those who believe that we shouldn't talk about saturation. We shouldn't make the point that there are 600 to 700 institutional uses and occupants within this area. So we'll drop that argument. And we'll drop the argument, if you like, that they have failed to separate them. I'm happy to do that. Frankly, I think this isn't a bad place after all. The more you say, I think maybe the people here would like it.
Well, in the health hospitals resolution, Omar and I, we've discussed the fact of what they said when they presented, that for legal reasons, they have to accept residents regardless of the criminal record, sex offender status, etc. And that is a concern. Without saying already people who are homeless, have this. It's just talking their language. I think that's what's in. I think that
I believe they are. I believe
the
that
land use
I
process.
believe they're telling you the truth. They have to accept and
That's right.
properly,
And
properly.
but I mean,
wait a minute. But they
yeah.
don't have to mingle them in the same facility. That's the point.
The
and
issue is, Mr. Murphy,
that's the
that
key. That's a key point in why we're going to present a resolution that rejects that particular model.
Look,
Because
we do
because
have
of
other
what they're
hands up.
doing. But I don't want to. We're discussing this. I feel that the magic is in the lack of process, which I think is stated very well. In terms of the saturation, I think what Lisa had sent you earlier, but it didn't make it into this version, was a little softer as far as the way the institutions are labeled or listed. But I think the failure to provide services is it's true. I mean, this is why we're objecting. Julie, if you have, there are a couple of hands up. Dan was next.
I guess my point is just more that I think those 3 points are more salient than getting into the park and like the dangers. I'm very concerned by those kinds of things. And I think the other points are stronger.
Why don't we just drop all the whereas and deal with the resolution? I'm happy to do that.
The be it resolved.
Yep, just go right to be it resolved.
All right, Chuck, do you want to hear from other people?
Sure.
We do have a number of other hands
We have a
up.
number of hands.
Can you just scroll down to
I'm sorry,
show the entire?
Dan, you were next.
Yep. Hey, Chuck, before you came to the meeting in the chair's report, I'm sorry, the district manager's report, it was stated that DHS was invited to the December land use meeting. And, I had asked Laura and Kira at the time, whether or not something can be arranged sooner based upon DHS. And if anything was offered to DHS sooner, maybe in means of a special committee meeting. My concern being the December land use meeting might be too late to get out any of these details and flesh out what this project really is. And Laura had stated, or I'm sorry, Kira had stated that you had invited them to the December meeting. I was wondering if there's any.
I had not invited anybody to any meeting. I know that there have been statements by some that the people are being invited. I have not commented on that. But I-
Chuck, we emailed last night.
Yeah,
You told me not December 6th, December 7th, because December 6th was Hanukkah, which I realized, of
But
course.
I didn't say, well, go ahead, whatever you want.
But Dan is saying we can move it up. Well, why don't we have
I'm
this,
asking.
why don't we
and-
have this discussion offline?
Well,
With
I
the
guess
town.
my concern is this, I guess there's some confusion as to DHS and DHS's willingness to appear and when they'll appear. And, has there been a discussion, Laura, with DHS as to what dates this month they can appear?
I will have that. Jeff Dinowitz is also wanting to set up something, a meeting with the board and others and other electeds with DHS.
But Laura,
Independent of a public meeting. But if
And
Chuck is open to that, absolutely. But I wouldn't, I think we'll have that discussion.
the public hasn't seen this project yet. Nobody's seen this project yet.
Dan, we had a public hearing. And
We haven't had a
DHS
hearing
came.
yet. We have not had a public hearing, Laura.
All
There's a
right.
committee meeting.
Do you have comments on the
No,
resolution?
he has a more substantive comment, which got merit, which is maybe all of this is premature.
I'm just gonna jump in. I will reach out to the Department of Homeless Services again tomorrow and ask them for what dates they are available in November to meet with the community board and take it from that angle. And hopefully move this meeting up sooner, if okay with Chuck, Laura, Omar, but I can get to them tomorrow.
I just want to know, it's been 40 days since we got notice of this, and there's still been nothing substantive in front of the community, to the public. And I think it's extremely important to get a date from DHS where they're going to present substantive matter to the community.
Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you.
Bob?
Yeah, a few things. I'll say right away, I agree with Dan. We've got to get somebody from DHS to come in and show us what this project actually is. All we know at the moment is, I believe, 5 stories and 130 men. How they're arranged and all of that, there are a lot of questions still to be answered here. And the sooner we do that, the better. But I want to go to, since we're talking about the be it resolved clauses, I want to go to the first one. And this is a question I have about the entire approach we're taking here around saturation and supportive housing. The first be it resolved clause, and Kira, can you scroll up a little bit so we can see it? It's cut off at the top. Yeah, thank you. Refers to the citing DHS and the city of New York and the citing in handful of residential city blocks already saturated with similar premises and occupancies. There are no similar premises to what we're talking about here. There is nothing comparable to this facility. So if we're making an argument about saturation with supportive facilities, I think we have to spell that out. And the only thing I saw in this resolution that addressed that was a whereas clause that mentioned specifically the proposed shelter, which doesn't yet exist, the W, the Stag Group building that's going up between the W and the motel. And at this point, we don't know what that's going to be. We are assuming it's going to be some sort of supportive housing, but that remains to be seen. The motel, which if that's supportive housing, this is the most elastic term I've ever run across. It's a blight, but it's not being supported by the city of New York, to the best of my knowledge. And finally, the Van Cortlandt Green, which is the building at 6469 Broadway, which I don't think anybody in the community has ever heard a peep about that building. It's no burden on the community in any way whatsoever that I'm aware of. So I'm really concerned about how we're putting forward a resolution claiming that there are similar facilities, there's oversaturation when there's nothing that's comparable to what's being proposed at 262nd and Broadway. That's my major concern. There's language in here as Julia brought up, that I find disturbing, like references in the very same clause to character and personality flaws, which, I mean, for God's sake, you know, we all work with people who have character and personality flaws. That's not a reason to reject this facility. So I've taken up enough time already, but I think there are some substantive issues here about what we mean by supportive housing and oversaturation.
Margaret?
Thank you. I won't reiterate what Bob has just brought up. I share those concerns. I also wanted to inquire about, I believe it's under the second number here, where we're talking about basically making some sort of persuasive argument about the political contributions by this nonprofit agency. I'm really not sure where that line has been coming from. I did hear it the other night at the land use committee, sort of like getting into the weeds on how much
I suggest you read,
an
I suggest you read city limits, and you note the fact that one of them having been criticized both for assaults on people.
But what does that have to do with political contributions? I'm not clear on that. And I'm not clear what purview I'm not clear what the purview of the community board is over how much the nonprofit charges for the work that's done on a 24-hour basis per each bed. You know, those are some of the questions that came up the other night, and I'm sort of seeing it again here. And I really don't understand what basis we have to make any sort of like, you know, quasi allegations about the integrity of this organization and those sorts of things. Going into the third paragraph here, I'm sorry, Kara, if you could scroll down. The last thing I would say is, you know, getting into the character of the neighborhood and those sorts of things. And maybe this is a stylistic thing, but the community, who the community is made up of, this is every community. Every community is made up of senior citizens and families and those sorts of things. So I'm just,
is a traditional statutory zoning term. It is in section 7221 of the zoning resolution, for example, as a basis for denying a variance.
So
that's the responsibility.
So this facility then therefore would be going against the zoning guidelines?
The character of the neighborhood does not speak to the population. It speaks to the nature of the structural community.
Structural community. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with those.
I understand that. That's obvious.
Okay, well, I'm asking for clarification because you're putting this in here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Merdler, that was uncalled for.
It may have
that
been,
was,
but
that was uncalled for, and I believe you owe her an apology. There are other opinions that are valid here.
Hell no.
It's all right. Every time I open my mouth, Mr. Merdler has something disparaging to say to me. So it's not the first time. But that concludes my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah,
Bob Panizzi.
do I know, Laura, I was next. I just wanted to clarify, I think Chuck was misunderstanding the change I had suggested to him on Monday. Along the lines of what Bob Bender pointed out in the first Be It Resolved. Yeah, I too was concerned about the language of designed to house assertedly homeless persons known or believed to have meaningful character and personal flaws, mental conditions, and like traits. And the language I was just trying to be a little bit more targeted and less pejorative, and just simply say homeless men understood to require significant social services and monitoring, as well as facility security and management. And those are the things that we have no idea what DHS is planning on doing. That's all I was trying to narrowly focus on, their ability, their plans and their ability to address the needed social service and security needs that Ms. Drinkwater did acknowledge that they have to address.
David, if I misunderstood and misstated what you wrote to me, I apologize.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
I
I
thought
was just trying to narrowly focus. That's all.
All right, so you were suggesting editing that language.
Whatever edit you want of that language, and I will adopt it. The concept on, as I told you when I got it.
Yes,
Right, so this is a substitute for that language. Chuck, I had also emailed you about that language. I felt that it could be finessed a little bit better. I think David did that. So David, you're saying that language instead of the other language that.
Wait a minute, which language?
Okay, again, in the first be it resolved, the second half of that sentence, designed to house assertedly homeless persons known or believed to have.
Whatever you wanted, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Number
That's
one
fine.
under be it resolved.
Right, and Chuck, I can, we can talk later and I can give you the exact.
I'm sorry, I thought you wanted it as a separate clause.
No, but that's okay, not a problem. I'm still a little uncomfortable as the third one. We discussed it before you got on the phone. The third be it resolved, because I really think it should be a whereas, but again, we could discuss that offline. I don't think it's material, it's just organizational. But I would like to change the language in the first one. But again, you and I can discuss it in greater detail. And based on our earlier correspondence, I think you would be comfortable with my language.
I am. I just didn't know if you wanted, I thought you wanted a separate clause rather than as.
Right.
I have no problem at all with it. None.
Okay, to save the group time, why don't you and I talk later to clarify that and let others address any other concerns they might have.
Fine.
Bob
all right,
Fanuzzi, I think, is
David,
next.
Bob Fanuzzi, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question, is this as of right?
Yes.
No, it's as of right in the sense that they supersede aspects of the building code and zoning law. By
So
the very nature.
What has the Health Committee or Omar's committee or any other committee issued a resolution? Are we going to have competing resolutions?
My understanding, all I know is I got a copy of a resolution which I thought had been adopted by Health, but apparently has not yet.
No, it's a draft that they haven't met yet. It's a
Wait a minute,
draft.
but that was based on an earlier meeting? Have they, so just tell me the sequence of who met first with whom. Health went first, right?
Right.
All right, there was a presentation at Health, Bob.
And was there
And
any
then,
action taken at the Health meeting?
And then Chuck at Land Use, I don't think you were at Land
No, I'm
Use.
not on the committee. no.
Oh, okay. They adopted this.
Yeah, I know that.
My
yeah.
discussion with Chuck,
My question is, so
Yeah.
has Health issued a resolution?
no, they did not on
take
that
it-
night.
they did not
Omar,
take
why
that.
don't you speak? Why am I speaking for you?
So we
Sorry.
really need to hear from, because we could very likely have two perspectives on this. Thank you, Omar. Go ahead.
Hi,
Omar?
so yeah, they met with us and they had a presentation and we have a draft resolution that is maybe it's gonna come at next meeting, which is gonna be next Wednesday. So this resolution,
Okay.
this resolution is about process. Our resolution is basically gonna take a stance on whether or not we want this model in our neighborhood. So there's a difference.
Okay. So Omar, you're intending to bring it to a vote in your committee when you meet next Wednesday?
Yeah, it's probably gonna come to a vote.
Okay. So I'll leave it up to you, Laura, about the wisdom of having two competing resolutions. But last, Chuck, I would just reduce as much ad hominem as humanly possible in the resolution.
I don't disagree. And
That's it.
that's
yeah.
why I said to everybody in writing, if you have specific comments, give it to me and I will adopt it. The language that I have here started with some language from David, and he was the only one who took me up on it.
Marty, your hand is up.
Yes, what has bothered me about all of this, and Chuck has pretty much hit on it, is the fact that there is no real process. And DHS is totally avoiding contacting us, giving us details, telling us the program is about. And so I suggested to Chuck, and he put it in, a reference to the Padovan law, because the state was running roughshod on everyone after the Willowbrook consent decree. And thanks to Senator Padovan, the law was promulgated from the state, which requires a process. And it's referenced here to go back to the Padovan law, because the Padovan law, and I'll use the terminology that's been of concern here, if a new residence or similar residences affect the nature and character of the community, then that's an inappropriate site. So the terminology of the character of the neighborhood is extremely important, and one that's used not only in zoning, but also in the Padovan law concerning group homes for group homes. So I'm in support of this concept and believe that's the issue we have to drive home.
Marty, I like the addition of the Padovan there, and I do.
Yeah, it's here.
It was very nice. Thanks.
I like the fact that we're asking for our elected officials to enact some kind of process. I thought that that's what makes this a land use resolution. Because we're going for something in the future. We're going for something we don't have right now. And that's what makes this excellent. And in a sense, the be it resolved is very key here, more so than the whereases.
As I said earlier, I'm perfectly happy to jettison every one of the whereases.
Because we could put some of that stuff in Omar's, in a sense, some of the, and this would be, I mean, I think that simplifies it in a sense, because we're asking for the legislation, we're asking for our elected officials to do something, to change the process by which they cite homes. And that's land use and planning. And I like that. How do other people feel?
We have Deb and Julia's hand up.
I'm so sorry. Okay, Julian. And Deb. All right.
Sorry, this may be my ignorance showing, I apologize. Just Padovan applies to shelters, because the only time I've seen it invoked was for group homes, which are fundamentally very different. So I want to make sure that that's accurate before it goes into a resolution, because group homes are for people who cannot function without supervision. Shelters are not necessarily that. These are for people who may need short-term assistance to be able to obtain a new residence.
Julie, your point
But thank you.
is correctly taken. But let me make a point made. I think what Marty had in mind, and that's what I interpreted in putting it in here, that there are parallel processes in other areas. So for example, it isn't in here, but one of the arguments that has been made in saturation is, why is that appropriate to put, why don't we have larger homes rather than homes scattered all over the place? And the reference is always to Willowbrook. Willowbrook specifically turns, the decision specifically turns on a failure of process and maintenance, so that there are concepts on how you do the process. And I think Padovan was only an analogy of the process, not as to the kind of facility.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just, having worked with DHS for many years, I don't want them to throw this out for some small thing like that when I think it's an important resolution, has a lot of really good points. So I just, again, if we're going to cite Patervan, I think it needs to be clear that it's either an analogy or that this actually has some foundation. That was my only comment. Thank you.
I would adopt the expert opinion here and take it
That's why I
seriously.
put similar to the Padovan law. If you take a look.
Right, it doesn't exist now, but we want it to be in the future, if I'm understanding that.
Let me
I
read to
would take Julie's advice.
Julie has a valid point, but I want to show her, I thought we anticipated. If she's not satisfied, I'm happy to correct it. And press for swift adoption of such legislative enactments, parenthesis, similar to the Padovan law, for close parenthesis. It was intended as a procedural landmark.
I stand corrected. I do apologize. I got this at 10 o'clock while I was at work, so I couldn't read
it's my
as carefully
fault.
as I wanted to.
It's my
No, this is all good. This is all good. This is all good. We have Bob Bender and Bob Fanuzzi's hand. Okay, Bob.
Yeah. You asked the question, Laura, about do we want to keep this focused on process? And I think that's exactly right. If we're going to have two different resolutions from two different committees, and we can argue back and forth about whether that's a good idea, but as long as we're going down that road, I think it's important to be clear about how the land use resolution differs from the health and hospitals resolution, and making this one process oriented is the right approach. Let's leave the other issues for Omar, where we've already had DHS representatives come in and speak to us, and his resolution can deal with the issues that were presented by DHS. But I'm totally supportive of making this resolution very process oriented.
Bob, I have tried to indicate flexibility for a reason. Let me give you the chronology of this. It was only after the Health and Hospitals Committee met and Omar shepherded an excellent meeting as I saw it, that we were asked at land use to take a look at it. There are land use concerns here. But the problem was, A, they didn't show up, and B, there were open issues. I thought the draft of resolution I got was an actually adopted resolution. And so what I tried to do was not to poach on their territory, so to speak, but to deal with issues from the vantage point of a zoning question. It is for that reason I'm perfectly happy to jettison the whole damn thing. I really am.
Chuck, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting exactly what you just said, that we keep this resolution focused on strictly land use issues, such as the whole process by which this came before us, or lack of process, and Omar's resolution is dealing with the other issues. So we're saying the same thing. I agree with you.
Happy to go that way. Let me make the second point. The only reason there's a reference in here to the homeless having this mixture of people, in my view, and Julie, who has greater expertise than I do in the area,
yeah,
I'm wrong. My point is, it's nowhere defined. And the term is used pretty broadly to cover a variety of issues. I couldn't put a resolution together, wordsmith that I claim to be from time to time, without doing something by way of defining what the hell we're talking about. And that's why these terms are in there. I'm just as happy to have, as I said, a simple resolution saying the process stinks. Fine with me. The problem I have is this is a resolution that has been adopted by the board, by the committee. How that gets changed before it gets to the board for a vote is another matter.
Okay. So Laura, that was my question. So are you intending
Well, as chair,
to merge these two resolutions, depending what comes out of Omar's committee?
say that again. Well,
Will
I
they be
mean,
a merged?
what would be,
Will
what would be,
there a single
wait, wait.
resolution emerged from the both committees?
I'd have to talk to Chuck about that.
I have no problem with it. Let it all come from Omar's committee for all I care. I have no pride of authorship on it.
All right, so then,
You asked me to put this together. We did in terms of having the meeting. We did in terms of putting the language together. If it was your view originally that this ought to be handled by Health and Hospitals, that was a judgment. It was a good judgment. Then the question was that we should pick up. Somebody's got to give me signals.
Okay, so the choice is either stick to the, in other words, stick to the be it resolved pieces and present it as a process, that the process thinks from the land use point of view. I mean, Chuck.
I have no problem.
No problem with that.
Put it all in Omar's resolution. I don't mind.
Okay, so we could do that. Omar. So in a sense, you're withdrawing this, and I'm going to take pieces of this and we'll put it in Omar's. We can't, so we won't be voting on something.
Oh, Laura,
Wednesday.
I'm sorry, Laura.
Yeah.
So you don't want to proceed with Chuck's resolution?
Well, what Chuck is saying is that pieces of it can go into yours because the process is the process is. We could refer to the land use, whereas it was stated at land use that. Whereas, I mean, we can give credit to the land use if you think that would work. Chuck, do you think that would work?
I'm not interested in the credit. Here's the issue. Here's the issue. Instead of doing what might have been done, putting both committees together and coming up with a single resolution, this
A single resolution would be better. I mean, why not move forward with Chuck's resolution?
I'm prepared to do that.
Yes.
I'm prepared to do any damn thing with this.
That would be better.
I don't know.
That would be better to go with Chuck's
If I may,
I'm sorry.
I would like to propose a joint resolution, have Omar's committee take up this resolution as well, see if there's anything they would like to add or subtract. It can then go back to land use before the December meeting. And then a joint resolution could be presented, which I think would carry a little more weight, having both committees say that there are procedural issues and there are programmatic issues with what we know of what is before us. And that is why we are opposing this, if that is how the committees vote.
That sounds fine.
All right, so we're not going
Madam
to
Chair, I
vote
have
on. Sergio, your hand is up. Thank you, Julia. Marty's hand is up. Fanuzzi's hand is up. Sergio?
Madam Chair, I do believe that it should be a joint. I agree with Mr. Murdo. The form is matters less as so long as we get the final product that we want. And if it's going to delay things, then I'm okay with Omar's committee taking a whack at it and just coming up with a resolution that incorporates everything. But on to Bob Bender's point previously on the saturation issue, I see his point. I mean, that was one of my major points that I thought that we should argue. However, I do think it's important that it be in there, that there are other facilities for people in need in our community. Because one of the biggest pushbacks you're going to get, I think, is this is just NIMBY. This is just not in my backyard. And, there are people who've got, $1 million homes in the area who are going to lose 20% of the value of their home or something like that. That is not going to be something that's sympathetic. I do think it's important to put out there the fact that we are open and receptive to people in need, because we are, and there are facilities out there, whether they're exactly the same, whether it's exactly a saturation argument or not. I think somewhere in there, it should say something like that.
There is a specific, Sergio, I do have to say this in my own defense. There's a specific clause I put in there to that event, specifically saying that we recognize our responsibility.
Right, right. No, and I did read it late, but I did read it, but I was just responding to Bob Bender's point about that saturation should not be the main argument. And even if that's true, that point should remain, that we do recognize our responsibility and we do stand up and accept that. And we've shown by these other places that exist. Thank you.
But saturation can be quantified easily. I just think, and they're called saturation maps, so that's no problem there if you're going to argue saturation.
Okay.
Okay,
Actually,
thank you.
we're hearing some very good ideas. We're trying to integrate the land use issues and the other issues. Thank you, Sergio. Bob and then Marty. Bob Fanuzzi.
Laura, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to check then, Laura and Kira, if you could make sure that a December vote, it's a full board second week in December vote would be timely for this particular project going forward, because it looks like we're talking about coming back, embargoing this for a few weeks until Omar and then bringing back to land use, so that you're getting 2 votes again. So the calendar I heard was a December full board vote. So I just wanted to make sure that that would be timely.
Yeah.
That's all.
Omar's meeting, yes, it would be a December vote. In the meantime, we have scores of questions that we will request answers in writing from Homeless Services. And this has, there's nothing in the ground, there's nothing in DOB, there's no building yet. We're at the beginning. We're at the beginning of the process here.
You're not really at the beginning. As far as the agency is concerned,
Yeah.
this is a go deal. They have a vote, if I recall correctly, by some entity within the next week or 2 on approving one of the contracts. So understand that this is not something that is months off.
Well, I think then we will vote next month. We will vote next week, and we will have a resolution to send. That will be in advance of anything, and that's what we will do.
So let me see if
We can integrate some of what would be, I mean, the difference in the resolutions is the model of 130 men, the model of warehousing, 6 to 8 in a room, as opposed to other models of homeless shelters. I think that we and all the elected officials and everyone are, would support a different model. I'm not saying no homeless shelter, but a different model. Because of the way they presented it and the facts that they presented, this is a very problematic homeless shelter. And if
that discussion so far is clearly not a land use consideration.
That's why.
What is a land use consideration of the following? One, that whether or not it comports with the character of the neighborhood in terms of it being not the individuals who reside in the neighborhood, but of the neighborhood as a neighborhood. Number 2 is whether you have a saturation of a non-conforming use, if you will. All right, that's the second land use concept. The third land use concept that is appropriate is whether or not there has been or could be a compensable blight under the case law, which I believe they would win, the city would lose. But that's not stressed here because of your view, the property interests are not something that we're going to want to focus on. And the last question is trying to get this thing put together in terms that is compliant, which is the reference to having a process and protocols on what to do. That again is process. That again is where the primary fault is from a land use standpoint. It's not the people there, it's the nature of the building. So for example, it is not desirable, according to city planning's decision, to have hotels in manufacturing districts without special permits. That was something that was before us a few weeks ago, all right? That's character of the neighborhood. That's what I meant when I said character of the neighborhood and not individuals.
But we could put that language, a character of the neighborhood, residential, you know, I think, Chuck, hearing all the suggestions tonight, we should proceed with this and have a vote next week. If you're open to some of the suggestions that you heard, Chuck?
I'm not even sure what suggestions there are here.
A certain language, you know, changing certain language, how we
tell you what I
adjectives, certain
what-
adjectives. And
what I-
as you said, focus more on the be it resolved, remove some of the.
What I said was, if people have specific language, as David Gelman took the time and the trouble to do, is to advance the language that they think they would like to have added. I will look at it. I got one a couple of hours ago from, I don't even remember at the moment who the heck it was, but it was
Lisa sent one.
all right. That was language that made sense. It fit in from a land use standpoint. Look.
Okay, so we will.
My recommendation is to put the whole damn thing over, but you're going to run a risk.
No, I think, Chuck, listening to what everybody had to say, I think we will have a land use resolution, and so that we have something before that MOC hearing in November. And I think that's, we'll incorporate. Are you okay with that, Chuck?
I don't know. I'd like to think about it.
Okay, we'll talk.
Laura, remind me what MOC stands for?
Contract. It's the, Chuck, what is MOC?
I have no idea. I know what an MO is, a memorandum of understanding.
It's what they refer to in one of their.
It's the mayor's office of contracts.
Mayor's office of contract.
Thank you, Kira.
Yes, contract, mayor. Okay. We'll talk. We'll continue the discussion. Anybody else have any other comments? Marty, Fanuzzi? Hands up.
Chuck know that the at the Health and Hospitals meeting, they didn't use the term saturation. They were big on the term of fair share. And so that's why I think that list that you put together is important. But it's also important to note that under my expertise to some degree is the Patterson law. Saturation is defined as changing the character of the community. And up to the time I checked 10 years ago or so, there have been no cases where anyone has won in the courts in case with respect to defining saturation. They define saturation as the whole community. Board 8, will this change Board 8? But more important to that, to me, is that when dealing with OMRDD, when that was the terminology, and the subsidiary and the subsequent agencies, when they talk about a group home, and I keep going back to group home, is that the 8, 10, 12 residents, whatever they put in, they guaranteed, it was their intent to ensure there was a match. The right people were going into the right places. If we have 130 residents, and there'll be 8 residents per room, that's 130, what did I just have here? 138 rooms. I think that's impossible. I also think if you're talking about an armory where you're putting just beds in, then you're asking for trouble. And if you're asking for trouble on that basis and nobody there is matched, that they should not be in the same community, same vicinity together because no one has screened them as to who is who, I think we're creating a terrible hazard to everyone concerned.
Marty, may I make a comment? I was just thinking a little bit more about what Julia said in correction of me, and she was right and I was wrong. I think what Julie said put the finger on one of my problems and yours. She pointed out, correct me if I'm wrong, Julia, she pointed out that there are facilities within the homeless network, DHS network, that are intended primarily for those who have mental disease of some form or nature, and that there are others that are focused on specific points. And that is something that I can understand in terms of it's the same conceptual point as you have in the group homes and the like, and that serve a very, very important purpose. What's happening here is you do not know at this moment what's going in here, whether they are of one kind that is compatible with another group of people or the like. If there was a reference to the self-help building, those who were present during that discussion heard Rosa Gill, that was the lady, heard Rosa Gill say, we do not differentiate between one or the other because that is not our responsibility. If you have a differentiation, you have, I think, a lesser chance of failure to spot problems before they're there. This is I'm being a little garbled in my presentation, but there is at root here the fact of failure to have a protocol, a failure to say, we are going to put people in who are compatible with one another and therefore think about their qualifications or needs or the like. And that is probably more of a health and hospitals issue than of a zoning issue or of a land use issue. What is a land use issue, as you pointed out, in my view, is this of a kind and of a nature that creates a problem? There was a concern expressed by somebody of the reference to the parkland. The hope was for years in this board that the area across from Van Cortlandt Park would be uplifted to the point where it would be a central park west of the Bronx. The quantity of these kind of facilities is going to make that impossible. It may already be impossible, all right? That is a zoning issue. That is a land use issue. That is the point I was trying inarticulately, I should say now, to make. The point is, do you want to have this as a neighborhood that is a warehouse? And I'm not saying warehouse in any sense other than it's going to be a place where we're going to have those kind of homes. And if so, what do you say to the people who live in the private homes behind it and are even more in terms of land use conscious? That's why, again, I take you back to what city planning said with the hotels and the manufacturing zones. That's land use. And frankly, I'd love to just stay with those land use issues. And they are really serious here. The inquiries we've gotten from, and I've heard from Senator Cousins' office are serious because they're trying to do the same thing on the other side. But you see, if I try to do that, I'm going to run afoul of Ms. Della thinking I'm trying to be offended or offending her with my comments about trying to focus on what are the components of such an issue.
Mr. Merle, I don't think there was any reason to call her out specifically. Again, I think you're out of line. And since you asked for my opinion in the beginning of this, I will clarify because based on some of your comments, you brought to light something for me. New York City does provide specialized housing, but New York City also has a right to housing, which means every person has a right to sleep in a bed tonight and is not forced to sleep on the street as some of our neighboring cities
Absolutely agree.
do. And that creates some of this complexity in that they cannot say you cannot go here because you are mentally ill. If there is a bed there, they are obligated to fill it with somebody who needs a bed.
Julia, be aware that I have personally been responsible for over 50,000 units of supportive housing as a commissioner of the New York City Housing Development Corporation. So I am aware of that.
I appreciate that. And you have some experience on me, but I've had over 500 units under my responsibility in the last 2 years. So I appreciate your experience, but I also, again, since you had asked for correction, I'm providing a clarification.
And I appreciate it, believe it or not. I really do. But
well, I thought I'd take advantage because you don't often ask for a.
Okay.
It was in poor taste.
I think that it's sensitive. I think, Chuck put a lot of work into this, and I'm glad that you're so open to all these critiques. It's not easy. It's not easy for any of us, but our goal is to help the community here, change the system going forward, and try to get something better for this community than what has been offered to us. So Chuck will stay with you with the land use themes here, and we'll present a resolution next week. Yes?
I think I want to talk to Omar to see what pieces he wants as comfortable.
Okay, we will. We will, but I mean,
let me ask Marty, there's a procedural question. You have a resolution that was adopted by a committee of the board. I'm not sure that simply because I'm chairman of that committee, I have the right to change it. There's a technical question as to whether the propriety of what you do here.
If it's a major change, then you need to go back to your committee.
That's
but you might be able to share with them, or the new law takes effect on the 17th. You maybe share with them the revision and ask for input. And at the board meeting, a resolution coming from a committee does not require a second. But a resolution like this would require a second because it's not their resolution.
Right.
But it can still be raised.
And do I have the right to unilaterally change this or abandon it? I don't know. Do I?
I always thought the chair of the committee, I mean, the person who presents a resolution has the right to, edit it, accept as a friendly amendment, withdraw a resolution. I thought I saw that in Robert's rules. No, Marty? I mean,
You certainly have the right to withhold it.
yeah, or
And submit a different resolution to be seconded on the floor.
right. I mean, it could be sent around and changed.
Well, that runs back into OML, which I'm concerned about. If
Well,
it's people are doing wordsmanship, not in public, then that could run afoul.
Well,
wasn't there a lot of wordsmanship on this that was not in the public?
Right. Well, this starts November 18th. After the new law starts November 18th.
This is one of the issues.
This is one of the issues, yeah.
On Monday at the LRE
Right.
meeting.
But I mean, in terms of how we vote and how this gets edited, I think that it's okay. Because basically we're talking about the same process. it's wordsmithing, or it's editing, or remove something. I
There
don't
was
think that
another
you'll get
committee-
opposition, Chuck. I don't think
There
you'll get
was another
opposition on
committee,
editing.
there was another committee that was challenged for just this reason, which is why I'm withholding a response until Monday.
And I'm aware of that challenge, and that's why I just raised the issue. This falls in exactly the same area. As to, if I understand process correctly, the function of this committee is to be a policeman to give its views. The committee's vote goes to the board. I don't know that I have a right, except for one reason, to do with anything. I specifically said at the committee meeting, I would welcome changes in the whereas clauses and focused on the resolution portion rather than the whereas. And if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, you commented on that fact and said, nonetheless, I'm going to abstain till I've had a chance to look at it better. And so my point here is, I don't know what the hell I can do beyond the whereas clauses. They voted for this resolution based primarily on the resolved portion rather than the whereas clauses. Am I wrong? Is there anyone who has a different view?
So Chuck, going back to what you said at the beginning of when you first came, you'd like to present the be it resolved?
Yeah.
Okay, so then bring that to the full board.
Fine.
And focus on those land use themes that you have in your be it resolved.
Fine.
Is that?
I can deal with that. And I don't remember who it was, whether it was Julia or someone else, who made the absolutely correct point that there are some, I'll call them ad hominem comments in portions of this that are unnecessary. I think it was the comment I got from
Bob Feduzzi.
Yeah.
I said it too, Chuck.
Whoever,
in an earlier email, I suggested editing some things, but
Bob,
it didn't get edited.
Bob, do me a favor. Give me your comments on what you want out of the resolution. Are you on, Bob?
I'm not sure which Bob you're talking to at the moment, Chuck.
Whichever one it was who has comments about language within the resolution. I remember they were focused on the words meaningful, character, and personal.
Yes, I brought that up, and I will be happy to send you language tomorrow.
Good. Let's get rid of that stuff. I don't care. That's not the purpose.
All right, so we're going to be focusing on the be it resolved.
Okay.
That's what you're comfortable with. I feel this has been a difficult, conversation, but everybody had a lot of, good points to make, and we do want it to be acceptable to the full board. And so I think that it will be when it's strictly on that land use and on those themes. All right, seeing no further hands, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
I want to stay on.
David,
Don't be an old fart.
David, talk to me about the language you wanted.
Do you
I'm
want to
sorry, what
stay
did you
on
say,
the
Chuck?
call or speak tomorrow?
I'd like to get it done with tonight as much as I can.
Okay, but I think that might require Kira to stay on. So why don't we just talk directly on the phone?
Okay.
Yeah, I also want to end the recording. I don't want to have this go on to something that's not the meeting.
Okay. So how do you want to do this?
Motion to adjourn.
A second? Okay, and then what's our next step? You'll look at this offline?
Yes,
Like
Chuck and
now?
I will talk. I think Bob and Chuck will talk. And
Okay.
then my guess is that Chuck is just going to come up with a draft to present to you in advance of Tuesday.
I thank you all. I thank you all. Okay, have a good
Good
night.
night.
That's
Okay.
all.
All right, bye.